All right. Good morning still, almost good afternoon. I have one rule that I've been told to make this not boring, so I'm going to do my best. And so a few roars of excitement would help me in making this not boring. But my name is Adam Gaynor. I am the Chief Revenue Officer of a company called Gamut. Gamut is the leader in what we deem the local and regional advertising arm of CTV companies, right? So we help any platform that has CTV inventory sell it on a local and regional basis. So we help local advertisers, national advertisers, et cetera. But to help it not be boring, you didn't come here to talk to me. You came here to listen to Doug. I've had the pleasure of getting to know Doug a little bit, but can you help explain who you are and your background and why we're sitting here?
Sure, thanks. You guys can hear me okay? Cool. Doug Zarkin, Chief Marketing Officer for Pearle Vision. Pearle is part of the EssilorLuxottica family network of brands and retailers. We own a few businesses you may have heard of. Ray-Bans, one out of every 2 sunglasses in the world sold. We own them. Oakley, a little establishment called LensCrafters, Sunglass Hut, Target Optical, and pretty much the master license to the majority of the upper-end fashion brands around the world. I've been with the company actually going on my 11th year as CMO. Pearle was founded, Dr. Stanley Pearle, in 1961, Savannah, Georgia. Realized that he had an amazing opportunity to revolutionize a category that even back in the 60s was stuck in the dark ages. And today, Pearle is about 600 locations, US, Canada, and Puerto Rico. And we were recently just named the number 35 franchise brand on Entrepreneur's Top 500 list. So really exciting, great brand, great legacy business.
That's awesome. Okay, so you're 11 years at this company. Are you excited today the way that you were when you joined 11 years ago?
So for all of you in the audience, virtually and otherwise, Pearle Vision is probably the most terrifyingly exciting role I've ever had for a couple of reasons. So you've got the franchising element. Anybody here ever worked for a franchisee, was a franchisee? It's crazy complicated. Then you have the healthcare side of the business because of exams, which means that you have to be HIPAA compliant, which means you have to understand insurance. Then we're also a brick and mortar based business. And then you add in the franchising element. So the fact that it is that kind of confluence of all these different types of businesses wrapped up into one big model makes it a day is not like any other day.
So yes, you're excited.
I think at times I'm terrified. I think at other times I'm excited. It's certainly, it's an incredible challenge for anybody, any marketer, any business partner that we work with to wrap their heads around this model. The other thing I should mention is that even though we're a national brand, we're only in about 90 markets in the US. So even though we think big, in order to win, we actually have to think small, really getting to understand the communities in which we are owned and operated.
You mentioned brick and mortar.
Yeah.
And so given that this is the evolution of retail, is Pearle Vision still relevant today? Are brick and mortar stores relevant today in the world that we live in?
So pre-COVID, you heard that Amazon was the retail killer. And I think we all agree Amazon didn't kill retail. Amazon killed shitty retail. It basically put every brand on the map that has a brick and mortar destination to actually think about why do you exist. If you have a reason to be and you have a great experience, Amazon didn't hurt your business. What Amazon did is it stripped out the commoditization of retail. Today, more than anything, what we are seeing is that people actually like people. I know it's really hard to believe that by watching Instagram and TikTok and watching the news where you hear about this person on this airline assaulted this flight attendant. There's a lot of that goes on, and certainly retail is incredibly complicated. But the human connection that exists in a brick and mortar establishment cannot be matched by what happens in the world of e-com. It just simply can't. And there are some categories where, frankly, just because you can buy it online doesn't mean that you should. And corrective eyewear, in my opinion, is one of those where to get the perfect fit, you really have to have an in-person experience. Doesn't mean you can't buy things online, but to ensure your pair of glasses fits you perfectly, realize that a millimeter of fit, a millimeter, that's really small, is the difference between seeing clearly and having a massive headache. And you are not going to get that by just simply opening a box of prescription eyewear that comes in the mail. You're just not going to get that.
So many of you may already know that I think it was 2013, Harvard Business School did a case study on Pearle Vision. And to me, it was a fascinating read. It was quick, it was easy to understand. But I pulled a few things out of that case study that I wonder if is still relevant today. One, this incredible push to have franchisees instead of corporate stores. And two, an emphasis on who you should be competing with. So can you talk a little bit about the franchisee model? And then also, I want to understand the competition, because some of your competition is owned by your same parent company.
No, absolutely. I mean, what I would really appreciate if you could read the case and find my old boss and find out why my name was stripped out of the case and,
I was
and
looking
his
for your
name was in it.
I even did a control F just to look
really,
for it. I mean,
that was a pleasant surprise. It was the gift that keeps on giving. But I have actually taught that case at Harvard Business School a few times, and it's really interesting. I shared that case at Harvard Business School, and I shared it with my daughter's high school incubator business class, and the questions were remarkably similar. Different word choices, but remarkably similar. So two things. Franchising is an incredible way to build a brand. And the reason is because when you have a franchisee, you have somebody who is in it to win it. And in our case, the majority of our franchisees own 1 or 2 locations. These are small business owners who have their entire family working in one of our eye care centers. And as a marketer, you know, it's really easy for us to sit behind our monitors today and look at budgets on an Excel chart and make decisions of the thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands. It's a little bit different when you realize that you're helping people pay their mortgage and put their kids through college. Franchising really grounds you in the humanity of what you are trying to do, why thinking has to be thorough, why there are a list of must-dos and needs-dos, shoulds and coulds and nice-to-haves, and you better have a really comprehensive understanding of that list when it comes to evaluating expenditures. So franchising is an incredible way to do that, because you're not going to find any group of people that are more passionate about your brand than a franchisee. The most important tool we have as marketers to begin with are our frontline associates. Whether you're corporate or franchise, people who work in the front lines are the single most important folks within your model. The second part of your question was about the competitive landscape. Yeah. And the beautiful thing about optical retail is that there is a wide enough berth and a wide enough set of medical needs that there is a solution for everybody. And I'll give you an analogy. I spent a lot of time in the fashion industry before going to optical. If your idea of a finely crafted suit is from H&M, there's a place to go, and that's great. Not saying anything, but a $59 suit is very different than a $599 suit. And it is the same thing in the optical world. There is definitely a correlation between what you pay and what you get, and that is fact. The materials that are used, the construction, the balance, there is definitely, you get what you pay for, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't take advantage. If you're somebody who essentially has needs reading glasses, I would tell you, go to Costco and buy 5 pairs for $14. That's really not a vision acuity issue. When you have a vision acuity issue, and my friends that are wearing glasses in the audience, you know, as your vision becomes more and more degraded, the importance of your lens and those decisions that you make require you to make an investment. Glasses, dirty little secret, are a medical device. And if you want to prioritize paying the least amount, you can absolutely do that. But I don't firmly believe that you should buy your glasses where you get your groceries. I think you need to go to experts that are trained, that care about you as a human being, that understand the dynamics of finding that perfect pair. So, long way of saying, our biggest competitor truly is ourselves. You know, we've got to deliver a great experience time after time, and then the business takes care of itself.
So what do you do then to differentiate yourself? If you're competing with yourself, if you're trying to stand out, I know a big push is on the medical side, yeah, right? What do you do, and how do you message to your consumers, sure, to come to you?
So I think the first thing that we do is we think human. Okay, we don't look at consumers as numbers on a spreadsheet. We look at them as people. People that have a real need to be cared for. Somebody getting glasses for the first time, it's a pretty terrifying experience because there is a physical proximity to the eye exam that cannot be removed. someone's this close to your face. And for somebody who's never gone through it, it's a little daunting. When they say, is it better this way or is it better that way? Well, what happens if I chose the wrong way? What's going to happen to my glasses? And then, oh my God, there's this wall of frames. One of the biggest fears, and there was a great Seinfeld episode, and less today because there's more unisex, but there's a great episode in Seinfeld where George picks out a pair of frames that were designed for a female, and he's walking around with it and has to wear his prescription goggles because he lost his glasses. There's a lot of tension points that go in. The way we win is we focus on the how, not just the what. Yes, we sell the finest assortment of frames and lenses, but that's not what distinguishes us. That's not what gets us a 4.9 out of 5 on Google ratings for OD quality. It is the fact that we care about the person behind the eyes. Our consumer-facing line, nobody cares for eyes more than Pearle. How do we do that? By actually giving a shit. It's not a transactional business, it's a relationship business. And I think you're seeing more and more brick and mortar businesses realize that the way you win is to invest in that relationship. It's okay to give more because long-term value, you're going to get more.
Yeah, I told Doug that my favorite part is that little puff in the eye. I look forward to that every time I go for my lens. Come on, puff, yes.
Just to make sure you're awake,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay, so talking about investing in your consumer, what do you do from a marketing standpoint to invest in your franchisees? How do you support them? Is it a local approach? Is it a national approach? Is it a personalized approach?
So there are things that we have to do in terms of the franchise agreement, in terms of where we have to make investments. But I think the single thing that we have done to invest in our franchisees is to give them a set of guidelines that allow them to build their individual practice around. When you come to Pearle Vision, it's somewhat of a turnkey model. We will design your eye care center for you. We will, we have a managed supply chain option. So we make it very easy for you to focus on what is most important, which is actually caring for the people in the community. From a marketing perspective, one of the things that I think we do really well is we are consistently consistent. And that is not about matching luggage with every piece of communication, but that is really understanding our brand DNA. The second thing we do is we're very purposeful in recognizing the fact that marketing is always about progress, not perfection. We're really good at what we do. We're not perfect. We're always looking at our targeting. We're always looking at our messaging. We just fielded a research study to understand our consumer in a post-COVID world. How has that relationship changed with healthcare? And then we're always looking to explore new audiences for patient acquisition because, as you mentioned, it's a pretty damn competitive landscape out there.
So when you think about your media mix and you think about all the different ways to reach consumers, what's important to Pearle Vision and what do you want to do more of in the future?
So I think it's debunking what I consider to be one of the dumbest questions that a marketer gets, which is, are you a performance marketer or are you a brand marketer? I think that question is moronic because performance marketing without an understanding of brand is not performance marketing. Because you show up on page 1 of Google, if your brand doesn't mean anything, you're not going to get the clicks, you're not going to get the impact. On the other hand, brand marketing without an understanding of performance is just a lot of really pretty stuff that gets done. And look, in today's world, pretty stuff when it comes to marketing, very few businesses have the opportunity budgetarily to just do pretty stuff. So for us, we're very choiceful in building the funnel, and it's a 7-layer cake approach. We understand the intersection between performance and brand. We understand how to dial up and dial down levers. I think one of the most critical things is we don't go overly promotional or incentive-based because all you're doing is kicking the can down the road, where a year from now, if you do that, you have to anniversary that, and nobody wants to do that to win.
What doesn't work for you? What have you tried that just doesn't work?
Yeah. So it's super, as you guys can probably tell, I kind of like a little bit what I do, and I get excited about the world of marketing. And the tendency is when you have that at the leadership level to go pretty damn fast. There are a couple things that we did pretty damn quickly that what I would call successful failures, and I'll give you a really good example. This brand for 20 years prior to me joining lived and died by the BOGO drug. Buy one, get one free was the way to really take advantage of Pearle Vision. And a year and a half into my tenure, made the strategic decision that we were going to eliminate BOGO. And it was great theoretically. It was disastrous for the business at that time because we hadn't yet done enough work to restore the numerator in the value equation. So brand value equals experience divided by price. It's a very simple mathematical equation. The better you are in experience, the more you have the permission to charge a premium price and still deliver positive brand value. And whether you're making 50,000, 5 million, everybody wants brand value from the brands that they trust. We had the right idea, we just were too early. We hadn't delivered enough experience improvement to warrant reducing the pricing, or taking up the pricing, taking down the discounting to give a positive brand value. And so we had to reset, we had to go a little bit slower. We learned a lot, but what we did is we learned also that our franchisees wanted to embrace a business that wasn't going to live and die by the discount drug. And today, happy to say, our discount rate is the lowest that it's been in the brand's history.
No, that's great. As someone who runs a marketing organization, you're constantly having to hire talent, retain talent, et cetera. What's different today? Like, what do you look for? What do you need to look for? Like, how do you manage a business like this?
So, you know, I have the pleasure of working with a team of marketing superheroes, and I use this phrase purposely. They were casted into their roles because it is super important to me as a leader who, as you guys probably figured out, I've got pretty strong opinions and points of view, to surround myself with people that have equally strong opinions and points of view. Because a great idea can come from anywhere. So for me, it really comes down to 3 things. Number 1, the most important thing I hire for is passion. I can teach you a job, but I can't teach you to care. Mm-hmm. The second thing is purpose. We've got to assemble a team of people that make purposeful decisions and are accountable for those decisions and are willing to say, I made the wrong decision, but I did it with good strategic intent. And then the last thing is celebrating progress. You know, the idea that if it worked perfectly, that's when you should celebrate, I think is insanity. Because as good as we are, marketers' number 1 job, as I try to explain what I do to my dad, who's 81, lives in Boca Raton, still thinks all I do is make commercials for a living, is our job really is to get into the mindset of a consumer and motivate them to do what we want them to do when we want them to do it, right? Like, that's the purpose of marketing. You have to be unbelievably arrogant to think you can do that perfect every single time. Yeah. And if you look at the baseball analogy, if you bat 400, you're in the Hall of Fame. If 4 out of 10 times you do it right, you're doing pretty well.
Has the role of the ad agency changed with time? Like,
yeah. The role of the agency model has changed. I mean, I spent a decade in the agency model where it was account, media, and creative was all in one shop, and I got to tell you, I miss those days a lot. Because what there was singular accountability and a much greater natural dynamic of communication. Creative would present to the account team would have the media team in the room to develop the media plan. Now that requires a Teams meeting. Inevitably, somebody can't make it, right? Or someone's dog barks or the Wi-Fi goes out. So I think the role of agency is always designed to complement the brand team. And if you do it right, you should be able to have agency people at a table with brand and not be able to tell the difference. With the exception of creatives who always wear black and carry a Mac, you know, isn't that just an awful stereotype that unfortunately likely still exists? But you need agency people to complement what you are doing on brand. And for me, the role of agency is to ensure that we're not drinking too much of our own Kool-Aid. Super easy to be thinking optical all the time when you're building an optical retail business. But I'm not competing with optical. I'm competing for share of mind and share of wallet for somebody who, if I'm lucky, I get them to come to me once a year. Once. Yeah. So how do I break through the clutter? It has to be somebody who understands the audience in the wild and that combines the insights of the business with the target to really formulate a great strategy and a great approach that allows us to win. Does that make sense, guys? Cool. I'll stick with that line because it makes sense.
Yeah, that's good. We're recording it, so
that's
that's good. Yeah. What does the future look like? Like, what does your business look like 5 years from now?
So, to say that we're a brick and mortar business could lead one to assume that we're not technology or innovation focused, which is kind of not the case at all. We look at innovation, especially technology, as a way to enhance the personal relationship between our patients and our eye care experts. A really good example is something that we launched at the end of, middle of last year called digital measurements. Digital measurements are a device that actually, when you're buying your perfect pair of glasses, clip-ons to the frame, our eye care expert with an iPad is able to take measurements, very similar to kind of like what you would see in the Terminator, all these different points of measurement to ensure that the dioptic measurement, where your eye fits within the lens, is perfect. Because again, a millimeter of fit is the difference between seeing clearly and having a massive headache. Another piece of innovation that we launched way before COVID that proved to be a rock star innovation was the launch of online patient scheduling. So as I mentioned, we're lucky if we get you once in a year. That epiphany moment can come at any time. We developed PearleVision.com and an online scheduler that actually allows you to find your neighborhood eye care center, find your doctor, pick a time for an exam, and oh, by the way, if you're a parent or caring for somebody, you can schedule multiple exams at the same time. That accounts for roughly 4 out of every 10 exams scheduled now. When I joined the business, it was like 1%.
I'm going to try to help you. How many of you have been in a Pearle Vision?
Just fake it and raise your hands
Right.
if you haven't. Make me feel good, please.
Well, look, I think the best, from what I've heard today, is if you put Pearle Visions inside of Tractor Supply stores, we could hit 2 birds with 1 stone, right? You know?
Yeah, I mean,
I'm just offering
okay.
You said no idea is a bad idea.
but I think there are degrees of good
Okay,
ideas.
got it. I think a lot of folks like to, when they're moderating, they ask, you know, what gets you up in the morning, what helps you sleep at night. I don't care about that. Okay. What I want to know is what pisses you off when you get up and what pisses you off when you go to sleep.
Yeah. The greatest thing in the world is wasted talent. Working with the people that I work with, I'm fortunate that they want to make a difference as individuals as well as part of a team, and most importantly as human beings. And that leads you to the point of controlling what you can control. What drives me crazy is when you don't control what you can control due to laziness, due to lack of effort. It's not about making mistakes. Mistakes happen once. Learning experiences is when that same thing happens a second time. The, hey, listen, we got to talk is when you see that repetition. And I think as you move into level 2 and level 3, that drives me crazy because there is nothing in our business that should prevent you from really making a difference, provided that I, as a leader, inspire you to know that you can make a difference. Outside of work, probably the thing that keeps me up at night is, like, why can't I get my second serve to be, like, solid? Like, I'm an avid tennis player. I've known Amy for years, and I work really, really hard at it. And that's an example of, like, where I just can't celebrate progress. Like, it's got to be perfect. There's nothing worse in the world than double faulting. So I'm pretty hard on myself when it comes to the court, mainly because I find tennis to be a really good analogy for business and the way we communicate. Follow me on this for 2 seconds. So in tennis, to win a point, every shot you hit isn't a winner. You set your opponent up to eventually win the point. And that's the same thing in business, especially with things like CRM. If every single piece of communication is designed to get an incremental sale, that consumer, you're going for a winner every single time and you're not going to win. The way we do it is we'll talk to you about eye care. We'll remind you that, you know, your glasses need to be clean or adjusted. We'll set you up so that when it is time to provide you with an incentive to win, we win. And that, again, speaks to the notion of how people process communications. They don't want to be yelled at. They want to be talked to and with. And I think now, today, more than ever, with the choices and options we have, marketers have to be much more discerning with how aggressive we are in trying to just drag you back in.
All right. Last question before we open it up. What are you streaming these days? What's important to you? What are you watching?
I love television. I can absolutely get myself lost in television, and that's probably because one of the things that I'm a sucker for in business is a great narrative. Marketers are storytellers. And when you're in a franchise business, you're telling stories. And I'm not talking making up stories. I'm talking you have to tell a story. Data is not what drives the modern marketer to make decisions. It's modern marketers using data to help them make decisions. Data doesn't make the decisions for you. When we're presented with data, we want to understand, so what does the data mean, and now what are we going to do with it? So in the world of television, I'm a voracious consumer. I'm all in the Yellowstone world. Tulsa King on Paramount, genius. I think it's probably Stallone's best role besides Rocky. And then I actually am probably one of the few that still really enjoys network television. You know, I'm totally into the Chicago series on NBC. And again, nobody's ever done it as well as Aaron Sorkin with The West Wing. So I'm always looking for kind of that very in-depth story that can get you lost in character development and really make you want to click in or binge watch.
Awesome. Should we open it up to questions? You've got a marketing genius sitting next to me.
Hi. Do I have to state my name and my shoe size? I'm Michelle Fino. I wear a lot of different hats, but this hat is on behalf of my role at Chicken Soup for the Soul Entertainment. I also am 46 and I just got bifocal contacts. How does that make me sound cool or what? Good socks, good shoes. Good job, team. Question. Maybe 5 years ago or so, Sephora was also embracing the relationship between their storefront employees and their consumers, and they actually took the leap and put storefront employees in all of their ads, in their creative. What is the storytelling strategy for the relationship between the store employees and the consumers at Pearle Vision?
So it's a great question. I've never been asked that question. It's a great question. I'll get to you afterwards. No, what we really use that interaction, that story, is to help fuel the stories that we share with consumers. Authenticity doesn't necessarily require you actually taking an associate out of an eye care center and using them in your creative. And I think especially in the reviews and rating culture that we live in today, if people want to get a really good sense of what it's really like to go to Pearle, all they have to do is open up one of our Google My Business pages. But we absolutely mine for stories, and I think one of the things that we have got to do a better job of is celebrating those moments where we go above and beyond. And during the pandemic, we had a doctor in Atlanta who decided that he was going to make house calls. Like, no joke, he did deliveries of contact lenses and prescription eyewear to people during the pandemic in his car in his own time. We had an associate who opened up one of our franchisee who opened up one of their eye care centers an hour early because the night before they got a phone call from a frontline worker in a hospital that she unfortunately stepped on her glasses and needed the temple fixed. Those kind of stories you celebrate. I don't think it requires us to actually show person A, B, or C, but sharing those stories and those moments of care to me is most powerful.
I'm going to toss one. I mean, why not? I got the microphone. But so I'm curious, you talked a lot about, and I appreciate, like I've said before, hearing you, always your passion in this idea that, it is a medical, right? Like there's truly, what I'm curious about is how you think through the mix of, and you just spurred it in my head of, there are people obviously that have either had glasses their whole life or that, right? But the mix of that versus making a brand impact for when ultimately someone that doesn't have it may need it, right? Do you think about that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, the eyewear part of our business is unbelievably important. It's how we make our money. But finding that perfect pair is where that expert eye care also comes in. It's not just in the exam lane. So I'll give you an example. There's a couple gentlemen in the audience, ladies, that are wearing glasses. They wear it on their face. If you're somebody who's wearing glasses 24/7, the weight of your glasses means something. Okay, you wouldn't believe the difference when you get into like the gram weight of a pair of prescription frames, what that could do to how you feel. So we may say to you, listen, a titanium frame is probably the best thing, or a memory metal if you're somebody who is taking your glasses on and off. If you're somebody who's living an active lifestyle, we may talk to you about something called Transitions Lenses, which is a brand that we own as part of the EssilorLuxottica family that go from clear indoors to protective sun outdoors. For us, the eyewear part of it is the opportunity to celebrate that moment where you're seeing as close to 20/20, but it's also kind of like your swag bag that you get after really doing what you need to be doing, which is caring for your eyes. And when we match that person to their perfect pair and we've guided them into their perfect pair, it's a wonderful feeling that we're actually making a difference in their lives.
That's awesome. Thank you. Does anyone else remember the time, at least I do, when I was like, I don't need glasses, but I really want some. I just feel like I need them. It's going to really up my game. So
it still exists. There's a very small percentage of people who wear blanks, is what we call them. But hey, come on in, we sell them. So
Awesome. Wonderful. Big round of applause for these
Thanks,
two.
everybody.
Thank you so very much.